Truck shopping has been an absolute nightmare, but I have picked up a few things, so let's get to it. As salesmen go, it's been kind of hit and miss. There's been a lot of them that are pretty good. There's been 2 or 3 of them that needed to be just drug out to the parking lot and whipped. And you're gonna have that. So I have really kind of started figuring out what to do when you start looking for a new truck. And it's been, dealing with these salesmen has been just a really high pressure situation in some cases when you go in cold. But that's what you have to do. You just walk in and say, I need a salesman. Now here's the thing, if you want that salesman to work for you, you have to use him. And sometimes if you really want to make, and there's a, like for MHC with locations all around, and they have a truck at another location that you want, you can use that same salesman to buy the other truck at the other location. You don't have to find a new salesman. So I learned that. But some of the high pressure tactics were really bad. Now Summit was bought out by Holt apparently, and so I was down at the international dealer in Oklahoma City, and they had some really nice trucks. Dude was straight up, and I really liked that. He was real honest about everything. He was a little bit, I'm not going to say laid back, he was a little high strung, but at the same time he had the right amount of reservation with what he was doing. You know, he was just, his approach was kind of, you know, let's build a relationship and see what happens. I like that. And I looked at several trucks with him, and you know, he called me a couple of times and we talked a few things out over the phone. Found one truck I really liked, and that truck ended up being one that had a very poor service history. It was it had disappeared in the system, and when things like that disappear in the system, chances are there's a good chance the truck was sold after it was wrecked, because trucks don't just disappear. So there was no clear record of who owned it. Now he said it was because the truck sat on the lot for 1.5 years between the transfer from Summit to Holt. And while that may be true, my only question is, why did that truck sit on the lot for 1.5 years? So while the diagnostics and everything came out really good, this was the history left a lot to be desired. Now he said that, and he's like, no, this truck's never been wrecked, this truck's never been this, that, and the other thing. And I'm thinking, dude, I've dug a lot deeper into this truck than you have, so I'm gonna have to take everything you say with a grain of salt, you know. And that's another thing, if you have access and you know what you're doing and you know how to really dig into these trucks like Carfaxing and stuff like that, don't ever let these guys know what you know. Now, interesting enough, one of the more interesting things, that didn't make any sense, I discovered something interesting. And one of the things that I was coming across in my diagnostic data was a phenomenon called dusting. And in the last few years, especially with the 579 platform, it's become a thing. And what dusting is too much dirt in the intake, and it comes through and it will end up scoring the turbo, and the dirt ends up going into the cylinders and ends up scoring the cylinders. Well, what happens is you have lots of high sustained crankcase, you know, you have a crankcase pressures. So when that happens, you know, you're going to be in for a rebuild. And what I've discovered through talking to people and through Cummins and all that is that Cummins is starting to come out with some really interesting diagnostics. And what they're doing is taking all of this information and putting it into spreadsheets and timelines and then comparing it with all their other, kind of like crowdsourcing, and they're building models. And what these models are doing is becoming very predictive in maintenance. And they've come a long ways with it, and it's quite fascinating. They can get within 60 to 90 days when things are going to fail, and they can do it with quite a bit of accuracy. So what ends up happening is you start getting a lot of high crankcase pressures. So that's something you have to watch out for. These just aren't spikes. What Cummins does is, instead of a snapshot, they're building timelines, like I said. So instead of just a spike, which happens from time to time, this is actually something sustained. So it's really quite interesting. So that's something that I learned, and it's something that I had to start watching out for. Now, I'm going to be straight up and tell you this. This is why I'm not going to talk about emission systems that much. Is that at 450 and 500,000 miles, I'll guarantee the majority of all that emission system has been deferred. It's a fact. You know, that's a hill I'm willing to die on. Trucks today are not designed for the second-end user. They're designed for the primary user, and they basically 500,000 miles and they're thrown out. That's kind of how they're designing trucks now. They're not designed to be robust. I don't care what anybody says. A second-end user is going to pick up the slack. So you can already count on spending in the next 10, in the next year to 2 years, you can already expect to spend around 10 to 15,000 on your emission system. Probably an SCR, most likely a filter. And truthfully, if the overhead hasn't been done when you get the truck, it's usually not a bad idea to go ahead and just spend the money before it goes into, before you go take it from the dealer. If you buy from the dealer, just have them run the rack. I mean, chances are they might actually just put it in with the price, or even if it's $500 or $600, it's worth having the maintenance at a level to where you know it's at. So the first thing you should do, regardless of what anybody says, is have an overhead run and have your truck serviced. That way you have a starting point. But, you know, all that being said, it's just, you have to expect that. So your emission system, unless it's really just spiking out of control and it's completely plugged, don't even worry about it. And truthfully, the other thing is, when it comes to that, I asked the same question everywhere I was at. Is this truck deleted? And 100% of the time, these dealers are telling me, we don't take them in on trade, we don't sell them. We absolutely not. We don't, you know, it's becoming a very real thing. And, you know, for a second-end user who wants a road truck, it's a good thing. But there is some added expense that comes along with that. So there's just a couple things to think of. You know, you want good diagnostics, you want good ownership history, and you want the truck to be doing what it's supposed to be doing. So let's get to the salesman. Now, like I said, the guy in Oklahoma City, solid. Liked him. The guy over at the Peterbilt in Oklahoma City, it's pretty laid back. He was all right. I didn't quite know how to take him one way or another. Excuse me. I think he was more interested in selling me something I didn't want, but he really wasn't pushing it on me. The guy over at Kenworth, for a first while, he was really... I got to know him a little better. The first time I met him, I thought I was going to have to literally fight him to get out of his office. I was like, man, one of us is going down. I might get whooped, but I'm going to put a fighting chance, because he was bound and determined he was going to make a sale. I kind of figured out why a little later, and I think he's been poached quite a bit. And so he started sending, but here's the thing, he started sending me stuff. He started finding what I wanted. And even though the initial contact was pretty rough, he ended up being a pretty good guy. I can't say the same for the guy in Tulsa. So what happened in Tulsa? Well, so I'm leaving the international dealer, or I'm leaving the MHC there in Oklahoma City. I'm a little stressed out, and I realized, I said, wait a minute. I'd asked the guy there if there was any inventory in Tulsa, and he never answered me. So I remember thinking, you know what, I'm going to make a phone call. So I call MHC in Tulsa and say, hey, I'm looking for X, Y, and Z. And they're like, yeah, we just had one come in. It's not even in inventory yet. It's a consignment. I was like, wait, what? Okay. So right there, it's kind of, he didn't come right out. But the thing he got me with was, it's not even in inventory yet. So when I realized it wasn't an inventory, that told me that I needed to go, because I'm going to tell you right now, when these trucks have been hitting inventory, they're disappearing like that. I mean, they're lasting a day or two. And I'll get to why that's happening here in a minute. So I come out of Oklahoma City like a bat out of hell. I get on the interstate, I-44, and I book at 80 all the way up there to a clown show. So I get to Tulsa, and I run over to the MHC over there, and I'm like, where's this truck? He's like, well, I thought, man, you got here early. I was like, yeah, these trucks aren't lasting. Where is it? Let me see it. So he takes me over to this completely shagged out 680 midroof. Now, he says this came out of southeastern Kansas. It was a flatbed company, and I knew the company. A buddy of mine had talked about going to work for them a while back. Real small company. I guess the owner's getting out of it. It didn't seem like a good deal at the time when my buddy was doing it, but that's a story for a different day. It's just what small companies are having to do to stay viable in the market. But that's neither here nor there. The truck was a little ragged out. It's on a consignment. They're talking like around 40 grand. It's set up for a flatbed. Had a platinum rebuild, so he says. So we go out for a drive. 680. It's got a 10 speed. Yeah, I can go either way on that. And it drives pretty good. But it's worn. It's a little rough. You can tell it was a company truck. It's gonna need new seats and a lot of cosmetic stuff, but the headache rack's still on it, the side box, all that stuff's gonna come off, so I'm gonna shed a bunch of weight. So we start talking price. And this is where the guy got me. So as I start talking price, I said, I know you guys got to make a little bit of money. I said, but realistically, what's your price on this? He said, well, we're going to probably tack on. He says, now don't, blah, 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 blah. It's going to be about 20 grand. I said, pump the brakes. You're going to add 20 grand to this ragged out, ratty ass truck. Well, we're going to fix a bunch of stuff and this and that. And I'm like, no, I don't believe it. Because I'll tell you right now, every consignment deal I've run across involved the dealers don't fix crap. They get either the buyer or the seller to fix it. But on a consignment, they're making their money, and they are not putting another dime into that truck that they're going, So you said you're going to tack on, you're going to make this truck almost $65,000 when it's done. But a hair over 62, I think. And I remember thinking, I can buy a 2 to 3 year newer truck with a warranty for what you're charging me for this? Hell no. And it was just a whole bunch of things like that. It wasn't that he lied to me, it was just misleading the whole way. He was running a con, and I was like, no, I just ghosted him, really. So, oh boy, I remember my first car. So, yeah. He was just running a con. The thing is, I expect to be lied to a point. He's a salesman. He's not really gonna lie to me, but they're gonna try to steer you in a direction for a sale. That's what they do. It's not really this guy, but this guy was just running a flat-out fade. It was junk. He knew it, and he was literally trying to force me into the office to start filling out paperwork. I'm like, dude, I said, I don't know I got a problem with rebuilt engines, but not only that is we were gonna have to drop another 10 to 12 grand in this truck just before it even came out of the shop. And I'm like, I'm not even doing that. So that's kind of where we were on with that, and I got out of there. I mean, it was a real disappointing trip. I wasted a tank and a half of gas going out to Tulsa and then back to the house. You know, I wasted an entire afternoon, and it was just really upsetting that, you know, but this is why you have to go and look, because these guys are going to run these things on you. And then, like I said, I ran into a lot of good salesmen, but he was not one of them. And it was upsetting, but lesson learned. And so we went on to the next thing. I just kept looking. One of the things I've been noticing about a lot of the big names like Rush and even MHC, but mainly Rush, is that their inventory is all a farce. There's nothing on that lot for sale. It's all been sold. And I ran into that a couple other places, but not to the level that I saw there in Oklahoma City. And I've seen that on some of their other lots too. It's just, the inventory just isn't there. And the inventory isn't anywhere. The most inventory I saw was there at Heartland, and it was all cookie cutter stuff, but at least they were smart enough to buy a variety of trucks in bulk to where you'd at least have somewhat of a variety. You know, they had the biggest variety of anybody in Oklahoma City. So, you know, you go out to Rush, and like I said, it was just a farce. There was nothing out there for sale. And the stuff that was for sale you didn't want. Who's buying this stuff? It was overpriced. It was overpriced everywhere. But especially PACCAR products, they are to the point now to where I got a feeling they're cutting their own throat. They're not giving people what they want. They're telling the people what they're going to take. And that's just not good in my book. That mentality right there is why there's just nothing out there. Because the stuff that people want is either not trading, or it's either not trading, or it's being sold as fast as it comes in. And mind you, a Cummins with a manual, they're only lasting a couple days. And the ones that are still there on the lot are just overpriced that nobody's buying them. And trust me, they're dropping the prices until they get to a price point that people are buying. In fact, here in Wichita, the 389 I was looking at, they dropped it 10 grand. And so I still think it needs to drop another 10 grand, but that's just me. But that being said, it's just the prices on used stuff is just astronomical. Now here's the thing. Anything with an automatic transmission or a PACCAR, dozens of them. They're just sitting around. Nobody wants them. Nobody wants them. And truthfully, if they were to go put manual transmissions in them, even with the PACCARs, they could get their money out of them tomorrow. That's not a joke. People want the manuals, and people want, you know, the Cummings. And you're like, well, you know, I know what you guys are saying. You know, all the big companies and all that, they're running automatics without a problem. This, that, and the other thing. That's fine. But these are first end users. For the secondary market, you don't want an automatic out of the secondary market. They're going to last a little while, but the clutches are more expensive, the maintenance is higher, and I'll guarantee you, you know, the downtime is longer. And like I've said before, there's so many things that are just very simple with a manual that are a tow situation with an automatic. And money-wise, it does not make sense for me. I've driven automatics. They're great. I like them. I like them if somebody else is footing the bill, too. But I own the business, and I'm the one that has to pay the bills. So when that happens, no, I'm not doing it. So, yeah, it's just, like I said, these companies are starting to tell people what they're going to take and not give people what they want. And I got a big problem with that, because I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to buy what I don't want. And hopefully some of these companies start figuring this out soon. But that's what I ran into with the inventory. I mean, yeah, if I just wanted a truck, I could have had one the day I sold mine. But I wanted a particular truck, and you had to have patience till I found it. Realistically, this whole ordeal of buying a truck has been a complete clown show. I really don't ever want to go through this again. And I know I probably will have to if I buy another truck. You know, this is why I really looked at buying a truck from the company I work for. They have good equipment. Even though they're condos, they have good equipment. And I know what I'm getting. It's a known quantity. And I can overlook the condo part for that. But I mean, they're holding on to their trucks like a lot of other people, so when I gotta wait for something to come open. And that's kind of where we're at now. Patience is really a virtue. I did notice that when I started getting apprehensive and I started wanting to buy and I started getting antsy, I took the rest of the day off. Sometimes I took the next day off. You can't be in a hurry here, guys. If this is how you're making your money and this is how you're running your business, you know, if you don't have drivers and you're not buying trucks in bulk and this is what you're going to be parked in for the next 4 years, take some time. I've been at this almost a month. And, well, when this kind of video comes out, it'll be at a month. And between you and me, I may have found a truck. In fact, I found 3 of them. One of them I kind of washed out, but the other 2, it's going to come down to those 2. And I've got my idea on which one I'm going to buy. Patience was a virtue. I didn't get in a hurry. And I also had a budget, and I also knew what I wanted, and I had to pick my salesman accordingly. Now, don't get me wrong, I went in cold. I just found the salesman, and I got lucky with a few, unlucky with a couple others. And so what did I learn? I learned this sucks. Give them your email if you and don't give them your phone number if you don't have to, but always an email. You know, don't be afraid to walk out. Don't be afraid to stand up to them. If this isn't the truck you want, you don't owe these guys nothing. Walk out. Don't let them guilt you into something, because that's what they do. That's what they were doing. They were trying to hustle me into signing paperwork for something I didn't want. Don't let these guys do that. You know, this is your money. This is your business, and this is your future on the line. And if you're out of work for another week and a half, that's a small price to pay for having something for the next 4 years that's no good, that you don't like. So just a little word of advice, you know, you guys, just be patient and make sure you can get what you want, because I'll tell you right now, like I've said before, you don't want to be stuck with something for the next 4 years that you hate. This whole journey's been fascinating, and not in a good way. But if you want to find the best deal and the best bang for your buck, you gotta get some muck on you. But don't be afraid, guys. The muck does wash off. So Happy hunting, guys. Take your time and don't get pushed around. So I appreciate it. Thanks for watching. You guys be safe out there, and we'll see you next video.